Peter, first of all, can you just describe what the stonework on the interior of the abbey was like before they began that cleaning process?
The stonework was grey. It really was a grey. There were different shades of grey, but it was grey, and it was caused by just years of dust. The gas lighting hadn't helped, obviously, in the 1880s. That had all contributed to the discoloration of the stone. It really did look in places quite terrible. And between the monuments, I mean, there was grey everywhere, literally, and even the monuments themselves were grey. So yes, at the outset, it was just a grey building.
And was the stonework all over the abbey grey, or were there certain parts that were worse than others?
One of the stories was that during the First World War, it was used as a hospital station, and that would fit in with the fact that the lower part of the pillars were a totally different colour to what was above. The above was quite grey, whereas the below it was a much lighter colour. So it could well be. And the talk was that obviously they used disinfectant. Of course, they only used it from as far as they could reach from ground floor upwards. So for about 6-7 feet up, the bottom part of the pillars were quite clean. And above that, they were real grey.
And so, when did the project to clean the stonework begin then?
The project began I believe in the September of 1995. I had just been appointed head verger when I was informed that the scaffold was going to go up, and it went up it started in the September, and it was up completely by the Christmas. So it took almost 3 months to erect completely. So there was a scaffold everywhere, north aisles, all the nave, right the way through. And you had these orange, around each of the columns, you had these great iron pillars with big holes drilled in them that came out sideways and held the scaffold. And then from there they built on up, and it just went on right well up into the roof space. And then it was complete roof space was boarded right the way through. The initial idea was that the roof would be revealed again by the Easter. It was the discovery of the paintwork in the chancel area that stopped that, and the chancel ceiling was actually covered in for the majority of the job, because it all had to be, obviously advice had to be taken on what could we do with this, how could we conserve it. So the nave was uncovered by the Easter, but the chancel was left right the way up until the final end of the interior cleaning. Again, with all the scaffolders, we allowed them access it overnight time, because it was easier for them to put the scaffold up overnight time than to put it up in a building where there were people walking around. So they actually erected it at night. Once all the main poles were in, then of course it could, and the bridge was in, then there was access, and they could work in the daytime as well. But anything that really covered the roof spaces, then that was done overnight time, because of the danger that something might fall. So really, the weight of it was unbelievable. But they were put as close to the pillars as they could, because that's where they felt the most strength was. So there was very little damage of any likelihood of it being any damage to the floor.
Where did they begin the cleaning?
They had done a test section in the northwest aisle, just to try the method that they were intending to use to see if it would work. And so I think it was that side of the aisle was the first one to do.
What kind of things were discussed in the initial meetings with Nimbus? What were their needs for the restoration?
Well, their needs, obviously, they needed to get water up onto to clean. They had to clean it somehow, and it was decided the easiest way was to clean it with water. And then they used these little killer sprays, these small spray things that we all use in our gardens. They also then asked for denture brushes, and Boots donated, I don't know, I thought several thousand of them, but it may not be, it may have only been a few. But they certainly donated all these denture brushes. They also had these very soft brass wire brushes, and they had sponges that they would use. And initially what they did in the initial stage was, once the cleaning started, they hoovered off the initial stonework in front of them. And it was quite surprising how much of it was, in actual fact, a lot of it was just surface dust, and it came off. There were no chemicals used, to my knowledge, on any of the stonework, other than between the monuments, where obviously they couldn't couldn't get the brushes in to use them. And what they then did there, I believe it was an ammonia-based poultice that was stuck on the wall, left for 24 hours and then taken away. And as you peeled it off, so the dirt came off with it.
How big was the Nimbus team? How many of them were working on the cleaning?
They varied. I don't think there was any more than about 12 at any one time. But yeah, it was a wonderful occasion, and everybody mucked in together.
It was the roof level that was cleaned first, and then did they go down the pillars from there?
Yeah, the roof level was the ceiling level was the first in the aisle and the chancel, and then once that had been done, then they worked on either side, working down the side walls between the clerestory windows and then the pillars that were there, down to window height, and then once that had all been done, then they moved down to the next level. Because there was this limit to try and get the ceiling uncovered by the Easter, they obviously had teams working on those ceilings to start off with first. But obviously once the painting was discovered in the chancel, then that put a hold on all of that. How they discovered it, they were cleaning the stonework with with water and their toothbrushes. When as they worked away, they suddenly began to realise there was colour coming underneath. And it was just a limescale wash that had been put up presumably in Victorian times, in the time of Gilbert Scott's restoration. It's unbelievable that nobody knew that it was there, completely covered up. But it was, and I do believe that it was in such a good condition that it didn't need to be restored. It was left as it was found.
And how did you feel when you looked up at that clean stonework and the colour that had been unveiled? What were your feelings then?
I think the only easiest way to say it was gobsmacked. I think we all stood there in absolute awe of what we were actually witnessing. It was just, the light levels were just so unbelievable. I suspect because it was a sunny day that also helped. I mean, it always helped if the sun was shining; it always brightened the building up. But I mean, it really was. It was just so wonderful.
Just the warmth that comes off you when you speak about this camaraderie between yourselves and also the Nimbus team. It was obviously such a special time to be involved with the Abbey, and particularly with its restoration.
Yes, it was. I mean, I count myself very lucky to have been in a position where I could partake in such a high level. We had a wonderful time. Yes, it was 2 years of worry. Obviously, there was a lot of and all sorts of things could have happened. Thankfully, they never did. But it was a period of great camaraderie, great friends, great fun, and we all worked together, and that was the main thing.